Hello, hello. It's been about a month since I did over a month since I did my last video journal. It's not uploading, so I want to tell a little bit about it before I get into whatever I'm going to talk about this time. So, I had a little bit of a breakdown, not a full-fledged breakdown, just kind of more of a realization, and I realized that, make sure I'm not zoomed in or anything. I realized that I had reached the peak of the stage I was in. Well, I want to give you a little background on that. So it's kind of like a metaphysical stage of going through processes of earth, fire, and water. Essentially, I remember when I first started on my little psychic quest, I should say a big, years-long psychic quest, I kept thinking there was this mountain similar to the pyramid that they put on the U.S. money with the eye on it. You know, to reach the highest knowledge and the highest power, you gotta climb the mountain. You gotta get to the top of the pyramid. And I even drew pictures of a man standing on top of a mountain to sort of inspire myself. And there's one picture that went along with that. It went along with it kind of unintentionally. It was an album cover I designed for a band. They ended up using it because they didn't like the way I drew the guitarist. But there was a mountain with an eye on it, and at the top of the mountain there was a bird sitting there. It was supposed to be like a phoenix. And flying above the mountain, off to the side a little bit, was me. And the reason I was flying is because I was finally above my depression. Or so I thought at the time. Because I was very depressed for a while. I wanted to kill myself really badly. It was back in like 2008. And this band that I was listening to, I was going to their shows. They're called the Peace Leeches. And I found out later that their music is just like stuff that's pre-mixed by Korg. Korg is a company that makes keyboards. And they don't really make their own music. I mean, they play the guitar, but they also use a keyboard. And when they use the keyboard, they just use the beats that come with the keyboard. But regardless, ow, fuck, I just burned myself. Their music was very uplifting and trippy. And I was smoking a lot of weed then, so trippy was good. And the girl, she would paint herself up with all these bright colors. and it was really, it kind of put me in a happy mood, and did get me part way out of my depression. But it turned out to be more that me on top of this mountain was me reaching so high I went above the point of the pyramid, above the top there. I went too far, learned too much, stuff I'm not supposed to know. Stuff that when you realize the flaws in nature. And the flaws in every system that exists in this universe. And basically what happened was I realized that I was at the top of the mountain. I reached the middle stage, and the middle stage between earth, fire, and water is fire. Earth is original, fire is recycled, and water is refined. Water is the end of the cycle. You have to come down the mountain. So that was what I realized, was I had to come off this trip, off this high I was on, that was making me so high and mighty, and so full of new things and new ideas. And I realized that I was gonna have to come back down to earth, you know. And I was gonna have to go back to basically a normal life, more or less. But I said the difference would be this time I'll know. This time I'll know what it is, you know. I'll know all these things that I learned on the journey. So I realized that I had to, because I learned what love was and how to use love to my advantage from fighting all these evil spirits, that I had to give that love that I'd built up, I had to give it up to the evil spirits. I had to give it away, because it was a power that I didn't deserve. And also that if I wanted to defeat these evil spirits, and I had to give up what I earned from fighting them, because it came from them. It wasn't their love, it was my love, but I wouldn't have had it if it wasn't for them. So you have to, you know, you can't get something without giving something of equal value. So I had to give up what I had, and that would also give me something of the same quality. So I had to give up what I had earned, so I could have something new. And yes, I was refined, and yes, I did come to a more clear point of reality, and everything that I learned was kind of refined into a more pure, more understandable, more correct state. But in doing that, I found that there's another element. Now, before I was using a system of 14 elements. I mentioned it before in my other videos, but this is different. This is a system of raw elements, of base elements, of things that can't be broken down into a smaller state and still have the same meaning. Protons, neutrons, and electrons, and neutrinos. Now, as I've said before, the Earth is the proton, the fire is the neutron, and the water is the electron. But there's two things that come before that, before Earth, fire, and water. There's light and darkness. Now, Christians are gonna hate and argue with what I'm about to say, but from what I have observed, I feel it's right. And Christians don't usually observe reality and then make judgments. They just read a book and go by whatever it says without checking to see if it has any truth. So because I've checked and tried to make sense of it and gone by what I can discern as proof, I'm going to say this, and if Christians want to go by a book instead of their own knowledge, that's fine. Actually, it's not fine, but that's up to them. And it's up to me to go by what I know. So, the original material, the first thing that was there is darkness. Now, if you're a Christian, you really only deserve to take that one step further and say that there was darkness and then God created everything else, because it says in the Bible that there was darkness and then he created the water, and the water was floating in the darkness, and later on he creates light. But and maybe that's a parallel with the Bible, and maybe that would actually support the Bible being true, but not the way that I see it. Because the darkness, which is made of histamines, now they may not be the size of normal cells, they may be even smaller, like the size of atomic particles. I think there's like a microcosm to the whole thing. Darkness, histamines, then creates light, which is white blood cells. So darkness is the element of attack. Before our universe existed, the previous universe had a war between the pre-existing beings, and they all destroyed each other, and darkness was what remained. So at first there was darkness and war and attack, and then healing was created. There's no purpose for healing until you do damage, so that kind of makes sense. So now we have the white blood cell, the light. And the light creates the earth element, which is bacteria, which is the first thing that kind of has a mind of its own. It's got its own thoughts. You might say it has no brain, etc., etc., it doesn't think. But bacteria is the earth element, and they've been able to prove that plants think, that they're capable of they don't grow as well around certain plants that they don't like, and then if you remove that plant, they grow even faster, seeking an opportunity to grow more while that plant is away. They all have a kind of way of doing things, and there's millions and millions of kinds of bacteria. There's a lot of variation on things, so don't take everything as like a small category that you have to put it into. There's a lot of different variety within each element, but it all stems from the same core thing, and these things of course grow and evolve as they go along. Then the earth element creates fire element, which is heat, and this can kind of be seen with how at the center of the planet Earth there's hot magma and there's volcanoes and stuff. All that heat is created by the Earth, and even with global warming, plants produce carbon dioxide, which heats up the atmosphere, and that's where summer comes from. And then winter is from when those plants, they take the heat, the carbon dioxide, back in. Now I'm not sure whether that carbon dioxide is more of a conductor of heat or more heat itself, or if they produce heat as well as carbon dioxide. I am sticking with my theory that they actually create heat, whether they create carbon dioxide or not. I just think those two things are interrelated. They're all one concept. And then the fire element is red blood cells. So now we're getting into not just the attack, and then the healing, and the plant life, like just the life. We're looking at a life form that has a functional purpose, that does things to assist other things. So fire element is transformation. Heat seems to destroy things, but doesn't really destroy them. It changes them into another form. It does tend to cause pain if there's too much of it, but heat and warm feelings can give you like a feeling of happiness and stuff like that. Either way, heat is thought or mentality. I mentioned in previous videos that the fire element is the soul, which is also can be called the mind. The soul and the mind are the same thing, or one and the same. So you have your red blood cells. That kind of gives you an idea of how it functions. Red blood cells carry oxygen through the body. They're like a support system to keep things alive. So once you have healing and you no longer need to just kill everything, when everything doesn't need to just be a war, and once you have life forms that have a purpose other than simply to kill or save lives, but actually have a purpose of living, and you also have things that do a job. So at that point we have to go, well, we have this whole system, we have people that want to hurt us, or not people, but in concept, people that want to hurt us, people that want to help us, people that just want to live their lives, and people that have jobs. Then you gotta say, like, well, how do we gain an advantage in all this? What's our competitive edge? And that's where stealth and sneaking comes in, because water is the stealth element. Now you might be thinking, well, what microscopic organism is water? And that is an easy one, and it is also very cool and very fun. Water is stealth, and yes, stealth is infectious. The sort of things you can put into people's minds, the ideas you can fill people's heads with, and the way you can either wreck people's thoughts or corrupt their thoughts or add new ideas into their thoughts, be they true or false, is infectious, and it has a way of seeping into their mind and changing everything they think about. So when you think of stealth, don't just think of being not seen, also think of other things you can do to make yourself appear not as you are. And stealth can add up to wisdom, because the more you understand how to not be tricked, the more you have wisdom that teaches you, that helps you understand what a trick is, how it works, what's real and what's false. And then lastly, you have blank element. This is the one that I'm on now. I've refined myself. I've taken stealth to the maximum degree it can go, and wisdom to the maximum degree it can go, and now I'm with this blank idea, this concept of no element, because I had to realize that all these elements are bullshit. It's not that they don't exist, it's that their function and purpose has no underlying goal and no thing that makes them perfect or usable in and of themselves. They all have a functional purpose within a very simple universe, a very basic thing where things are just based on, attack, healing, growing, and thought, and then stealth. And that kind of doesn't cover everything. Although with all those things together, you can have an infinite amount of variables and an infinite amount of variety that can come from those things, and it kind of gives the world like a way of being functional. It works, it gets the job done, but all those elements have weaknesses, so they can all be beaten. So there's an element with no weakness, and that's that blank element, and that is neutrinos. scientists say this and that about neutrinos. I can't really remember all of it, but the neutrino element, although it has other purposes, is essentially speed. You have all those things together. Fire is already motion, but then what about speed? What about the ability to cover ground between point A and point B in the least amount of time? That's what speed is. So this blank element also has the powers of each element of darkness, light, earth, fire, and water, but it only has them each at half the strength of the true elements, because it itself, although it is an element, it's not those elements, and it still has their strength. What I'm trying to say is, it has fire, but its fire is only half the strength of real fire. And it has darkness, but its darkness is only half the strength of real darkness. It has everything in it. However, unlike the other elements, it has no weakness. So that's where it makes up for everything that it lacks. Makes up for only having half the power. It's kind of like a neither here nor there element that has every ability, but at the same time it's only got half that ability. But it has no weakness, so it's very hard to harm it. There's no one thing that has a clear advantage over it. And what it produces is nothing. And I'm not saying it doesn't produce anything. It makes nothingness. And in a world full of things to take up that space, that seems to me to be easy to negate. But the more empty space you create, I guess the more room there is to move around. So you kind of go either way with that. I haven't really figured out nothingness yet, which is a pretty hard concept to understand. But from where I see it, from where I stand, now I'm in this neutrino. I'm in this point of, saying, you know what, whatever, I choose no element. There's no answer, there's no right thing, there's no philosopher's stone, there's no perfect answer to anything. I'm just saying there's answers, but they don't pertain to these elements. These elements are more like questions, looking for an answer, problems that need solutions. And so is the neutrino, because it only has half the strength of another element. It's almost perfect, though, having no weakness, but then it still has no underlying purpose. No one thing that it's trying to accomplish in the universe. And we humans were made up of all these particles. And we have things that we want to accomplish, but typically our goals are just goals that we've set based on things that we've already encountered. They're already based off of these elements, including neutrinos, including wanting to do nothing, or wanting to do something that is completely not of any definition by anything else, but still kind of has little bits and pieces of everything, or of multiple things. I'm not getting that into detail because it would take too long, and it's too confusing, and I don't have my notes with me, and I can't remember all that stuff offhand. But essentially that's what it is. And now I'm wondering, how am I going to achieve this nothing? What's it going to mean? And am I then going to die? My other video that wouldn't upload, where I said that the last step is refinement. You have to give everything up, and you have to look at things and say, I gotta cut away the bad and take this good and make it into something more perfect. That was the third and final key to the afterlife. Because if you've been looking at the descriptions of my other videos, I have 2 videos. One says the first of 3 keys to the afterlife, and another one says the second of 3 keys to the afterlife. So that's the third. Now, where there's keys, there's a door. Or a chest. But I consider the afterlife as a place you can go to. So I'm going to think of it as a door. Now here's the hard part is, if I have these keys, where's the door that I can unlock, and what is it? What is this door? And that makes me wonder, and worry a little bit, but not too much if I'm going to the afterlife, is when I get to this nothing, when I'm finished this blank element, am I then going to die? Probably not. Because every time I've thought that this quest I've been on would result in something that dramatic, it's always been something less dramatic but more meaningful. So it's probably not that I'm going to die. It's probably that once I have all this information and all these, not necessarily powers, but mostly mental and spiritual abilities with which to access the world around me, then I'll reach the end of the journey and I'll be met with nothing, and it'll just be a waiting game. There should be something after that, but I don't think there is. I think from that point on it's just using what I have to get by. For a while, especially at certain points in this journey, I thought that I had to create my own element. That seems impossible. I did create the Megatron, but that particle was just it was just a more powerful version of light. So it wasn't anything that we didn't have before. It was just a better version of it, and I created that to give the universe a purpose and a higher light. Because light is the most powerful element. Something that can heal itself, lives longer. And that really is the greatest power there is. And I believe through that element, through using light to make myself more powerful, because light is augmentation as well. It's just sort of a roundabout way. Like you can heal yourself to be even stronger than you ever were. I believe through that I've changed myself into a form where, rather than being reincarnated, rather than my data, my chemicals, my body, the things that I'm made of, going back into the cycle, when I die, I won't be recycled. I'll instead be brought into a higher state. I'll be not immortal, because I will die, but the form that I become after I die will be immortal. Like I won't come back into a physical body. I'll become like an essence. Like I want to say a spirit. That doesn't really make sense. I'll be like an energy. The part of me that makes me me will go on and endure and become conscious, even in death. ascend to a higher plane of existence. Now, there are many so-called higher planes of existence in other dimensions, but I believe that there's like some kind of heaven, but not in a traditional sense, not in like a biblical heaven or something like that, but like a place where people who have been elevated in life to the point they don't need to be reincarnated, a place where they go where they're free from all the suffering and the torments and the obscurities of life, free from this mundane world. And I believe I'll be able to go there, be it somewhere in outer space or be it a complete different dimension. But I don't actually know that because I have no proof. I just got this feeling that I know is right, that something's going to happen. And something's going to be different. And when I die, I will neither fade from existence nor be reborn into a new form. I will continue to be as I am. I will retain my memories. I will retain my consciousness. I will retain my state of being, as in who I am. And I think either this blank skill or this nothing, or both, are going to teach me exactly what that state is and what state of being that is. I think that's all I have to say for now. It seems pretty interesting to me. And I'll have to look into that. Okay? Bye.